Lounge, and this evening we've got Damon, who's known as Out of Sight, Out of Mind on Instagram, and we've got a good number of images to go through and discuss. And so I'd like to welcome you on, Damon. Thank you for coming on our podcast here.
Thanks, Damon, for coming.
Right, thank you very much, Brian and Gladys, for inviting me. It's a bit of a privilege to be on. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for it. So we appreciate that. That's good. Okay, so well, I think we can just start off if you maybe just want to give our viewers a little introduction about yourself and what you do, and then we can follow on with some questions.
Yeah, my name's Damon Finlay, as Brian says. I have an Instagram called Out of Sight, Out of Mind, which is mostly street photography. I have done landscape photography and sort of general nature photography in the past, but street photography is kind of my passion at the moment.
Okay. Gladys, you want to add anything?
Yeah. And how did you get into street photography? Your journey, what's your background?
Yeah, as I said there, I kind of started out in photography doing landscape, seascape photography, and I started to dabble with street photography around about 2019, and I sort of bit to learn another string to my bow, because it's I think there's always more to learn, and it was a different genre, and it was kind of with the thought that if you learn new techniques or another genre, it helps you in the area you're working in mostly, the way you shoot. There's always things to learn.
So what area do you mostly work in?
At the moment, it's now just street photography, urban, some architecture. I would say it's more architectural snapshots of things. Any architecture I see alike, I'll take a photo of it. In the past, I would kind of do that in conjunction with long exposures, but since I kind of started doing street 90% of the time or 95% of the time, don't really do long exposure architecture stuff anymore. Don't carry a tripod around anymore. It's the difference in your kit doing street photography compared to doing landscape or even architecture it's like night and day. I can take a camera body and a couple of lenses in a small bag, whereas if you're doing landscape or seascape or architectural, you want to set up on a tripod, you've got the tripod, you've got filters, you've got it's a rucksack as opposed to a small bag. So it's been eye-opening, the difference that you don't, for the kind of photography I'm doing, you don't really need too much equipment,
Yeah. Okay, one question we normally ask people, so going back, how did you first get into photography, Damon? What was this? How did you start that, and maybe talk a wee bit about that, please?
Yeah. I'd always kind of been interested in photography, and when I was growing up, I had a small Kodak Instamatic camera which would take snapshots on holiday, and that was the kind of background. So the catalyst that drove me into photography now was for my 40th birthday, which wasn't yesterday. My wife took me on a bucket list trip. I really liked history, and so I was into the history of the Roman Empire. So I was going to Rome for my 40th birthday. So I wanted to have a camera that I could take pictures of the landmarks, the city, and capture the history and sort of my experience of the trip.
Okay.
So that led me down this slippery slope of photography. I bought a Panasonic bridge camera for that, so that was great. Done the trip, took the photos, and that was kind of the start of it. taking the photos, looking at them, then led me to discovering Flickr.
Oh yeah.
And then started posting there. And then it was that thing where you started to, for the bridge cam, I wanted to move on to DSLR, getting my set of lenses, and it was then trying to learn as much as possible. I would say the first 3 to 5 years I didn't learn much, and it was more trial and error. And then it wasn't until 2013 I kind of thought, no, I want to make the most of the equipment. I'm enjoying this. I want to learn more, and bought a couple of books by sort of well-known photographers who specialised in their sort of teaching books or their learning. So, and that kind of set us off on understanding the whole process, understanding the exposure triangle properly, etc., things like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So talking about books, so of all books you've learned, which one did you find useful, and which one was your favourite as well, and why?
As a teaching aid, as a learning,
and also just enjoying, a favourite book as well.
Right. The best book that I read as a teaching aid to really make you understand the exposure triangle and the sort of creative possibilities from that was Understanding Exposure by Brian Peterson. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yes,
he's quite a well-known author. That was like the light bulb moment with a lot of things. It's like understanding that this can be a correct exposure, but it's not necessarily the only one. It all depends what you want to do. So that was the light bulb moment that opened up a lot more possibilities and understanding. And favourite photo book or monologue from other photographers. There's a couple I really enjoy, and I suppose they're both kind of shot at night. It's Josh K. Jackson's Sleepless in Soho and Liam Wong's 2 books After Dark in Tokyo. I find both of them brilliant, or the 3 of them, the 2 Liam Wong books and the Josh K. Jackson Sleepless in Soho. It's just, I think, it's the moods that they create with their photos. That's the thing I really enjoy.
Okay, and did that influence you in your photography?
I think it's really satisfying when you've taken a shot and you feel there's a mood and an atmosphere, whether that's initially what you captured, but also if you've enhanced or slightly with processing, or if I shoot with Fuji, so I usually have a number of films and recipes in the camera, and there's some that are better for certain types of photography, i.e. nighttime or whatever, and you do that, and when a scene really suits the recipe you're using, it's a great feeling, and sometimes it can feel quite cinematic.
Okay.
Or it feels like that sometimes.
Okay.
And of all the photos you took, which one's your favourite and why?
That changes on a regular basis, I would say, but there's one that I took in here in Edinburgh, one of the first sort of street photos, but it didn't actually, or you can only really see the back of somebody. There's a cocktail bar on Queen Street, I think it's called Lucky 7, but it's got this great neon sign in the window. And it's basically an arrow coming down pointing towards the door, but within the arrow is the word liquor. I liked the colours, and and the arrow was kind of pointing to, what attracted me was the fact that the arrow of the sign was pointing to empty glasses. And I thought I liked that. And I thought it was quite atmospheric. But when I took the picture, I didn't notice at the time, but it wasn't until after I took the picture and seen there was actually somebody going in. So there in the corner, you can see them going down in the door into the thing. But it was the whole scene with the colours, the neon signs, because we don't have a lot of them in Edinburgh. And as I say, with the arrow pointing to empty glasses, I thought it was kind of ironic and appropriate. So that kind of, I would say that's probably it's a long time favourite of mine, and there's so many others that just come and go.
Yeah,
but it's definitely one.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough. Well, just going on to it, I mean, obviously now, you know, we've got a lot of, we're not going to AI because everyone talks about it, but just generally, I mean, how do you approach your post-processing? Because there's a lot of, you know, a lot of things we can use, you know, like presets and all the rest of it, or how, maybe just talk us through how you do it, just to give us an idea so everyone can listen and understand,
Absolutely, yeah. I would say now with doing this street photography, there's not so much, and with using specific film sims loaded onto the camera, it's almost like having a preset in the cam already. There's certain things, there's certain parameters that don't transfer into Lightroom from the actual Fujifilm recipes, but you're close enough to what you got there. So then it's mostly now it's basically just fixing any exposure issues that are as a result of the kind of nature of what you're shooting. You know, if bringing up the shadows a little bit if you need be, or bringing down highlights, because generally if you're shooting at night, you're dealing with a lot of high contrast scenes, and you can't always balance it all out within the camera, you know. So it's adjusting them to try and suit. Occasionally, as needed, I'll use like Lightroom's masking tools, because some of them they've really improved in the last year or so.
Definitely.
You know, a long time favourite has always been the radial tool, because it's so much. There's so much more you can do to control that than just using a vignette. You know. And you can target specific areas to whether it's, most of that is to brighten something up, to draw people's attention to whatever the subject or whatever part of the scene should be, you know. So that's kind of it. There's occasionally, depending on the scene, and if I've had to use the geometric correction tools in Lightroom, and sometimes obviously that'll cut off, you might lose some of your frame. I'll probably go into Photoshop and use the AI generative tool to actually create a bit off the side. It's not as you're not creating AI art. You're just using that tool to fill in blanks on the edge of the screen.
I get that.
So that's kind of as drastic as it gets with street photography. When I was doing landscape and stuff like that, I would commonly, I mean, used to use filters. Then you would then go into the bracketing, and you would blend in the actual the brighter area. You're bringing a darker frame for the sky, you know, just to bring it down a little bit. But there's with street photography, I've never had to do anything like that, because it's minimal, and especially the way the camera's set up, it's just those very small adjustments, or alternatively if you're converting to black and white, you know.
No, I understand that. I mean, generally speaking, I mean, see when you're out and you're taking your photos in your street photography, do you have an idea in your mind what your processing is going to bring to that image to put out, you know?
As I say, sometimes you'll realise that there's part of the frame's going to be really quite dark, and you might just have to brighten some of that up so you're aware of that. Especially if that more applies if you're shooting at night. You know, there's parts that will fall into darkness, and sometimes they need just a little helping hand. But generally, that is round the edges of the frame, because you're to try and maximise and get the best possible ISO setting. You're kind of looking for pools of light and people within the pools of light at night. So,
okay,
you know.
And do you choose a theme when you go out shooting?
I have done in the past. I don't do it so much now. But in the past, I've tried to find colour matches, or one specific colour, or looking for similar kind of gestures, you know, things like that, expressions or gestures. So that's the kind of thing I'll do. But generally, a lot of the time, I'll just it'll be basically out for a walk. I'll go into the city centre, starting generally the same places, and walk and see what happens. As you know, sometimes you're lucky, and sometimes you're lucky, and there's quite a lot that can be of interest. Other times there's nothing, not a lot happening. And end of the day, the worst thing that's happened is you've had a decent walk, you know. I don't specifically have any real projects as such on the go. There's some small themes, but these are things that are nothing unique, you know. There's the kind of thing that lots of people say colour matches, or even gestures and expressions. Lots of people do that, but I don't have any project as such on the go.
Okay. Actually, I just found out something well, I always thought about it, but I think when you're talking earlier about, you know, because I've got a song, it's called Creative Styles, you know, all the different inbuilt filters, but we all know that's effectively like a JPEG at the back of the screen. But I tested something just 2 days ago. I set my camera up to take a photo in RAW and in JPEG, and I took the image into Lightroom, and I just thought, well, you know how normally sometimes if you want to copy something, you just copy and sync it across. Yeah. And I actually took the settings from the JPEG and made the raw image almost similar as the JPEG, you know?
Wow.
So that's a wee tip for anybody that's not, you know, because I've often wondered that, because sometimes when you see it and then you get home, you know, when you load up a raw image, it just looks flat. But I just tested it and I thought, I'll try this. So I took the JPEG, I've got the two of them in, and then I just on the sync settings, I thought, oh wow, my raw image looks like the JPEG, but you've still got the full raw image to work with.
Yes,
you know?
aye. So you can make you can make variations with the snapshot feature, and you can either keep that one with imported JPEG settings, or you can then create a snapshot and start again from scratch, or reset it and see how close you can get doing your own normal process.
That's it. Yeah. Because that was a tip that I used to always use. Sometimes if I was, you know, sometimes you get home and you look at your raw image in the back and you think, well, it's nothing like what I had in the back of the camera, you know, but sometimes I used to just put my camera on my desk beside me and just look at the image at the back of the LCD, and then, not to say that's how I wanted it, but I try and get my images because I'm mainly a nature photographer, Damon, and basically I like to try and get it, because I like to take my time and get it right in camera. So when I take it home, just to get it how I want it. But I just tested it and it worked. I thought, well, crikey, there's something different.
That's that. Well, it's like that thing. There's always things you can learn, and that's the same for processing as well as actually taking the photos themselves as well. But it's one of the things I do like about the Fuji system is the film sims. And I said earlier that not all the big thing that the major change in them doesn't get transferred over, I believe. And the biggest impact is a lot of the film sims and the recipes on like Fuji X Weekly, and there's a few other one camera, one lens. The biggest influence in the way some of the recipes look is the alterations to the white balance. They'll plus and minus the blue and red channels to different degrees for different effects. Okay. That in itself, those changes don't get imported into Lightroom, but all the other settings do. All the other settings that are applied, or 90% of them do. So you get quite close to that actual film sim recipe in Lightroom itself, and then sometimes it's small tweaks to the white balance to make it, to get it more back to the recipe.
Okay.
I mean, occasionally shoot RAW and JPEG, but occasionally it's one of them. I will sometimes use the JPEG straight away because they're perfectly fine. But sometimes I don't, because it's almost like adding another step into the way you do things. It's like, well, and it's filling up the hard drive twice as quickly. Although you've got 200 JPEGs and you've got 200 RAW files, and then you have to filter through. I'll load all the RAWs into Lightroom, then you have to cull all the ones you don't want, then you have to go back and do that in the JPEG folder, and it's like, oh. So sometimes if the JPEG is really good, is really exactly what I'm looking for, I'll just use that. But otherwise, I will take the RAW and I'll use that basis, and almost like using it as a preset, you know, and tweaking it to suit the image. I think.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine, right?
I think, it was to highlight the point that for starting, whereas you don't need to have all the latest and greatest or certain types of equipment, because that's one of the best things I'd heard on YouTube or by other photographers was that if you think you need all that, you have to remember that all the sort of historic greats in photography, whether that's street photography or landscape, all created their images with more basic tools than what we carry in our pocket. Our phones are more powerful than the cameras they used at the time of the film. And yet they've done, it's not what you shoot it's what you're shooting, it's what you see, and it's what you create. It's not the equipment, it's
a story.
Exactly. Yeah. They're only tools, aren't they? It's how we behind the camera. That's
exactly, and I think that's a famous quote from Ansel Adams: "Is the most important part of the camera is the 6 inches behind the viewfinder."
Exactly.
It's the person, it's what they see.
Yeah.
I think that's. I don't know if you'll remember, there was a YouTube channel, Digital Rev, and they done that. They had a sort of an excerpt where they would get famous photographers and they would give them basically toy cameras, and it would say, let's see, right, there you go, let's see what you can get with that. And it was a stuff, and you're talking about things, it was like children's cameras. I think one of them was the Spider-Man camera. I can't remember who got that. It was a Spider-Man camera, 1 or 2 megapixels. And they're going out to do get something, and it's actually amazing. Not every shot was a winner or anything, but there was moments you could see the intention, and it proved the fact that it wasn't the tool; it was the person behind it, the person using it.
Yeah,
it's
a good exercise, actually, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's like that thing that people people say to help improve your photography, and I think this is kind of said a lot in street photography. It's like use one camera and one lens for an extended period of time, and you'll get to know the focal length. You'll get to know the limitations of that, but also the strengths of it, and that will come across in your photos.
I think also to add to it, it's very much like when we used to like analog. With film, you only had 24 exposures or something, and you had to make sure you got it right. Otherwise, you get a bunch of negatives back that were all either too dark or too light.
Well, that's it, exactly. Yeah, you don't see much, but no.
I think that's the reason why I wanted to get myself. I've got myself a shoot camera as well that I'm going to take around Glasgow and just shoot with, and it's a small one without a Fuji, because, like you said, it gives you an opportunity to improve.
Yeah. It's back to that thing. It's an ongoing learning process. It's the whole thing. There's aspects you can take from one genre into another, and it helps improve you all round. The more, again, just back to that thing, just a willingness to learn and understanding that thing, there's more to learn than you already know. It's
And also,
and I
even
think-
with the mobile, you can get some amazing shots if it's done
with
correctly.
what?
With the mobile, you can get some
Yeah.
amazing shots
Yeah.
if it's done correctly. You know.
Yes, I've got young. Well, they are young, but they're not teenage daughters anymore. But for being a keen photographer, there's very few of my mobile phone shots of my children will get approval to be seen anywhere else. That's if you've got children, you'll probably know they'll want approval before that can go on Facebook or anywhere else if you're sharing with family. None of that. It's like, Dad, I thought you could take pictures. Goes, well, I just for some reason it's one thing I actually thought about recently. I want to improve my mobile phone photography because I don't think it's that good. And that's a me issue. It's not the phone issue. It's not a camera issue. It's me. For some reason, I don't know using it. I probably don't approach it the same way as I would if I was doing things with a camera, which is wrong. Yeah. And that's, as I say, that's a me issue, not the tool, if you like.
Correct. Yeah. Okay,
a work in progress.
Okay. Now I think we should maybe just talk about some of your images. So,
yes.
Gladys, do you want to pick your one first, and we'll talk about that first, and then we'll do them, in sequence thereafter.
Yeah. This is the bridge to nowhere at Belhaven Bay in Dunbar. It's quite a well-known location or site in Scottish photography circles, I would say. This time I think I had the opportunity. I think I had a day off work or a couple of days off work. I was on holiday, so I thought, I'm going to go down. I'm going to go somewhere. And my usual go-to place is Seacliff, but I thought I want to do a change. And I've seen the tides was in, so I thought I'll go down to Dunbar. I'll go down to the Bridge to Nowhere. The tide will be, and I'll get that. And it'll be early morning, long exposure, and the mist, the Har wasn't forecast. So it was a massive bonus.
Aye.
I couldn't quite believe my luck. It was that travelling down the A1 to Dunbar, obviously getting excited because you see it. Wasn't expecting this. I hope it doesn't burn off by the time I get there. So got set up. It was one of them. There's a couple of different spots. It's like anything. You can take so many shots and move your position, and it alters the perspective on the actual photo. And I think I took 2 photos. I was really happy with this, and there was another version. It was a slightly different angle, but I think that I liked this one the most. And I think it was the bonus of the mist, and I thought it set off. It was really lended itself to the minimalistic approach here. And that was exactly what as soon as I got, that's what I was aiming for, and that's set the tripod up, got the filter on, and it was probably something like a 2-minute exposure because it was before sunrise. It was it was happening and you were getting light, but you couldn't see the sun because of the Har. And it was just perfect. So it was that thing. It just it was probably around about a 2-minute exposure. But it's like when you're there and you can see, and that moment when you've got that first shot back and you can see I know you can. I don't know if you feel the same, but sometimes I feel that you can't actually. You can get excited about what you see in the back of the camera because you think that's a good one and that's what I've got. I'm really happy with that. But you can't. I've had it too many times. You get it back on the computer and you realise it's maybe not as sharp as it should be, or the tripod's moved a little bit. And you're like, oh God! But it was one of those occasions where you're standing there. It was quite cold. The excitement because knowing the chances of getting conditions like that, and especially on out of the blue, so to speak,
Aye. Oh yeah, just pure luck.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's the thing. When it's your hobby and you're fitting around your others with your work and your family life and things like that, you can't just go at the drop of a hat all the time.
No.
And it's one of them. Something you can get kind of. It can be you can be quite envious at times when you see, for example, if it snows tomorrow and you say, oh God, I wish I could just leave work and go uptown shooting or out up north or something.
Yeah.
And because we don't get conditions like the fog, or even snow on such a regular basis. It is, although the country and the world kind of grinds to a stop when we do get snow in this country.
Yeah.
It's not a common occurrence for us, or mist or fog like that. It's so to be in the right. It was that feeling of being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah,
and pure luck.
God, this wasn't it.
Yeah, I love this street photography because it's just the humour that she's drinking that drink down, and
But the thing is, for me, I mean, I'm not really I've done street photography because a bit like you, Damon. It's all about trying different things. But and this when I saw this, there's so much going on, you know, with the guy up there where I think that's an iPhone and he's got his hand on it. You know, there's so much. So maybe we can just talk us through this image because it's got a lot going on. But it's really quite good. There
is, and that's the thing I like about this image. There is so much going on. I'd went into town this day. I wasn't actually aware there was an independence march on when I left. I'm a terrible planner for photography. It's almost like not the rule book. I've thrown things out the window. Whereas for the landscape photography, you'd eagerly scour weather forecasts and tides and see what you were right. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there. Yeah. And it's the exact opposite with this. As I said earlier, I'll generally just go into town and walk. And that was kind of the plan this day. And as soon as I hit Princess Street, I got off and was hanging around the art gallery at the Mound, and that's when I could see the first people with flags and banners. And I thought, oh, right, there must be a march. And I spoke to somebody, oh, yeah, it's gathering up at Johnston Terrace, going down the Royal Mile. So I thought, right, I'll mosey on up that way. And this was just in the build-up to it. There was people. I don't think they must have just started, because I think the girl in the foreground, she's obviously videoing it. But I've been standing around in the mile with the crowds and watching the actual march. And I turned and I'd seen the girl with the camera and the hat, and it was more or less the hat. I thought, oh, it's one of these almost cliche things in street photography. People with hats, let's take pictures of them. And that was the kind of thing that initially took my attention.
Okay. I just love the fact that you've got the lady with the camera in front, and then in the background you've got her drinking, and then the further background you've got someone taking a picture. I mean, that's quite clever, really, that you've got all of that composed.
That's
layers in complete different
layers. There was layers, and that was the kind of thing. That's something that I am actively trying to improve. But I think it's very, very hard to do, or to do well. But I think this is one of these.
Yeah, and you've done it like in a triangle as well, if you look at it.
Yeah. The two ladies in the front and the guy at the top's a triangle. He's the peak of the triangle. But that's what I like, the fact that she's the girl in the front's videoing it, and her friends just decided, obviously she's there to take pictures, but she's got her coffee and she's just like, I'm getting rid of this, bang. And as Brian, you said earlier, the guy behind it's almost like he's holding his head in his hand to say to the girl knocking back the coat, don't do that.
Aye. The other thing
it's back to that thing that you can build your own story around everything that's happened, and we'll never know for sure exactly why he had his head in his hand. Was it a reaction to something he's seen, or was it just a fluke? You know,
Well, that's it. It's all about his expression in his face and everything,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But you know where my eye's drawn to as well. And I don't know if you can tell me if this is intentional, but see when you look through where you've got the guy with the Scotland flag with the dark glasses,
Yeah.
and you've got two flags, and you've got the two poles. The guy with the glasses,
The
he's
glasses
even
behind, yeah.
he's even right. He's right in the middle. You know, he's not even got the pole in front of that. Was that intentional, or was that just something
No,
that happened?
that's a fluke. That's a pure fluke. That.
All right. All right.
I think I was just glad enough that I'd seen the two girls with the guy standing up behind, and it was just. I think as a lot of things there's things. As Gladys said, those. I think it must have been the fact that they're almost triangular must have been the thing that initially. It must have been, as well as the girl's hat, the shape of them must have been the initial trigger.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and then all
that's exactly what I would have been triggered by what you just said.
Yeah.
The shape of the triangulars and how you can see the different layers being building and how they're all pointing to one direction in some ways.
Yeah. And I think it's just that's the initial building block, but what makes a picture is the things that you can't plan. The fact that the other girls knock back or drink, and the guy's holding his head in his hands as if he's in shock about something as well. It's just these are all the ice, the cherry on the cake. All of them. It's like not just having one; it's like having 1, 2, and then as Brian's the other guy in the middle and the back. But even the other guy on the side with the Scotland flag, it's almost like he's staring right down the camera as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I also like about this photo is not just the people in it, it's the fact that you can actually see it's actually Edinburgh because the building.
Yes.
So you've actually got the location, because very often when you see street photographers taking photos, they don't always put the location, they concentrate either on the person or the background looks a bit messy, you know, but the fact that you've put it in a situation that this is Edinburgh, this is what's going on, and it's got like you say, the cherry on the top with a bit of humor to add to it. Good.
That's
cool. So this is obviously taking you back to your landscape days.
Yes, this was taken on my last trip to Skye, and that was in 2019.
Okay.
Generally, through photography, I made quite a few friends through photography and sharing it on things like Facebook. There was a whole group of us that used to go up to Skye.
Okay.
Every February, March. But on this occasion, I went up myself. It was the last time, or unbeknownst to me, it was my last time because it was 2019. Obviously, that's the whole kind of reason that I didn't or don't do as much landscape or do it at all, is the kind of I lost interest through the pandemic. So this was prior to that, and I didn't know it was my last time. But this was a day 2 in the Isle of Skye.
Mm-hmm.
This is on the Slagacan River. I hope I've pronounced that right. I've probably butchered that, but it's I think sometimes the Gaelic or the Highland names are open to interpretation.
Indeed. Aye. Listen, as long as we think what we're saying is right, and then
yes,
that's all you can do.
Yes. So this was first thing in the morning on day 2.
Okay.
But I was in two minds. I was in two minds to actually get out and go, because the day before I'd got up and I went up to the Kerrang in the Skye, and I was going to try and get to a point called Needle. Uh-huh. But unfortunately, I parked the car and started to walk along the footpath at the bottom of the ridge. And then the heavens opened and the wind started, and I soldiered on, but then it was like, I had to give up. I was soaked to the skin. The wind was horrific, and I thought, I gave up, went back, could change the clothes and dried out and went elsewhere. But so it was that kind of thing. The forecast for the following day, the morning, wasn't great, and I thought, do I want to get up early and go out and then get the same treatment? And I'd kind of almost talked myself out of it, but I actually decided to go.
Okay.
And I was aware of this point. You don't stop at the hotel or the campsite, but start at that end at the bridge further down. You take a turning and you go further up the road, and there's a lay-by, and there's a single track or a single path sort of that takes you to a cottage, which is just out of the picture.
All right.
And this takes this part of the river, and the whole stretch of the river is actually fantastic for all these small falls and tumbles of the water, and that's the kind of thing.
Yeah.
With the cooling mountains in the background, I thought it was, and I think it was one of these times that okay, there wasn't the golden sunrise or anything like that, but I think the sky, because of the rain that had passed, it was like a storm laid in the sky. That changing of between the storm to dry to calmness, I thought it was quite moody, and it was just had the wellies on, got into the river, or dodging away from rock to rock as you do, trying to get a good spot without falling in.
Or dropping your camera.
or dropping anything else, lens caps, they usually float away. But no, it was just, I don't know, you probably have the same feeling when you're in that situation as well. And it translates to doing the street photography. If you're on a roll and you're in a flow, but again, it comes back to if you found the spot and you managed to get a composition that you're happy with, and you're taking variations, you're changing the shutter speeds to get the different movement or
texture in the water and that,
texture and the hint of movement in the water. And along with the clouds, and in this case, you're out in nature. It could be blowing, it's blowing a gale, or there's rain droplets floating about. But you're in your element, you're busy setting the shot up, but you're also taking in your surroundings, and I suppose it's just like you're in the elements, and you're feeling alive when you're doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
And what I like about it is what drew me in with this was the way that you've got the way the water, it's kind of leading you up and round, but the clouds, you've almost got that stormy darkness of these sort of deep blues, but then you can see where you've got in the middle. It's almost like that's the sun just starting to lighten up the clouds. You've got that contrast in the clouds,
Absolutely, you've described it perfectly. That's exactly what it was, because, as I said, I'd almost convinced myself not to go, and when I did leave, it was raining.
Yeah,
and I'd parked up at the lay-by, and I gave it 10 minutes or so, and it actually went off, and it was like, okay, I don't believe this. It is calming down, and I took another shot at a spot nearer the lay-by, and that was a black and white. That was the thing, man. I thought that was a catalyst, right? The conditions are really good. They are turning. As I say, you're not getting golden light, but sometimes you don't need that. You just need the contrast in the clouds, and there's enough light to show the water.
Aye.
And it was a case of back to the car and get the wellies on and get along the track. I knew this was there because with previous visits.
It's nice because you've got the lumens in the foreground as well, which helps keep, it's just lovely, and I mean, from a right, obviously, one thing I'd be asking, obviously, I don't know if you've used a very shallow aperture like f8 to 11, or is it a stacked image? How did you put this one?
It was a single image, and this would probably be f11.
Right.
With this, the light, because it was still pre-sunrise, or it was suns and the cloud. This, I would say, the movement in the water, I probably didn't need any. I didn't need a ND filter to slow the water down, because the shutter speed, keeping the ISO down to 100.
Yeah,
this was probably still around about the go-to shutter speed for water like that was a sixth of a second. It was anywhere between 1/6, 1/5, or a quarter of a second.
Well, I was going to say a quarter, but you're right. That's the sort of that's what I would tend to.
There's a range, because as you'll know, a lot of it will depend on how fast the water's flowing itself.
Or how much there is, or the flow of it. But I know it's just lovely. I hope you've got that as a print.
I do, actually.
I hope you do have it to print, because it's beautiful.
He has.
I do, yeah. I do have this as a print. It's
this, because I like the way it had get your coat, you've pulled.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I thought the first time I seen it? I hope it's not the guy with the puffy jacket and the hat.
Well, that was the thing. Believe it or not, I first noticed them. I was at the corner of I was on the Royal Mile at the corner of George IV Bridge, and I was debating in what way to go. Where am I going to go next? Am I going to go up towards the Lawn Market and then maybe down onto Victoria Terrace or whatever, and head for there?
Mm-hmm.
And these two just passed, and I just seen the sign. And I just burst. It was one of these that, and you have that internal laugh. You thought, I need to get a picture of this. If I can get it, there's a bit of humour there as well. And I literally chased them down the road, down George IV Bridge, taking shots, trying to get it, because obviously we're trying to do it candidly, but I mean, I don't know how candid it could possibly be, as I'm trying to walking at high speed, or having to get in a bit of a jog to try and get into a position. And then this was taken with the wee Ricoh GR3, and I just used snap focus on that, which is basically, it's usually set, the settings are usually f8, 500th of a second.
Okay.
And that gives, with the snap focus, my snap focus distance is 2 meters, so that gives me enough depth of field that everything should be. Mm-hmm. I can be as close as a meter, but anything beyond that, everything's going to be in focus anyway. So they were on the pavement, and I was literally walking down the road trying to get in a position, and I having to speed up to get in front of them. And there's when you're taking shots at various intervals. Luckily, he may obviously never noticed, because his face was covered by the sign. Otherwise, I'd probably get hit over the head with the sign, because he wondered why I was stalking him down the road. But it's one of those things. You've seen what could potentially be a good picture or a funny picture, have an element of humour as well.
Yeah.
And it was just doing my damnedest to actually make sure I got the shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
you know what's clever about it? It draws you in, because because the way his forearm or his bottom, his arm's covering the letters, it makes you, it stops, and you have to go and then it sucks you in and gives you a few seconds to think, oh, that's what it is, So it's quite clever as well.
It's like, as you say, it's without seeing it all spelled out, but because of the phrase, we're familiar with that phrase in general. Yeah. And when you can see, you can miss out 3 or 4 letters, you know what it's saying. And I think I've probably seen a novelty quote rail like that somewhere else before, but to see somebody obviously just bought it, God knows where, on a Sunday in the Royal Mile or in the city centre. But it was just, I thought, it's one of these things when you see, you've just got to get the shot, or try and get the shot. And I was fortunate in the fact that one of them was actually sharp enough and not blurry, or blurry beyond use. It was, and the fact that I got the bulk of the sign, got enough of the sign with all the actual wording on it. That's the main thing. And it's just, as you say, there's two. I think there was actually 3. There was a lady with them, but she's so far in front. I don't know if she didn't want to associate herself with them when they're carrying that sign.
That's right.
Yeah. she was just so far, just in front of them, and it wasn't until later on they got the shots and they kind of moved away or went ahead off, and you could see them all bunched up at a crossing just beyond there. So that, as I say, that's on George IV Bridge. I think I mentioned the group of friends used to travel to Skye with and do landscape photography with, and some of my friends, some of them do weddings, others were doing portraits and model shoots, and it was the last thing. Shoot people was the last thing that was on my radar. Nothing to do with me. I don't want to do that. And then I found myself doing it again, just to improve general skills, and go from there. But it's just been such an eye opener and so much fun doing it as well. I think
you have to be a certain type of character to do it. Like, you have some kind of what's the word? A bit of confidence.
Confidence, aye.
A bit, and a bit.
Know how to talk out situations.
You have to be comfortable to speak to people if you have to.
Exactly.
And I think that's the kind of thing I'm trying to do more often, is to actually ask people for like a street portrait. I find that very, very hard.
I do that occasionally. I occasionally will approach a person as for portrait.
I've done it once or twice and I found it hard. But in general, I've found most people are quite amenable.
They are.
But I also have the view that, okay, you're taking candid pictures, but I also have the view that if somebody sees you and they approach you, you have to speak to them, because you're not doing anything wrong. But if you don't want to speak or deal with people, you shouldn't really be taking a picture, because most of the people aren't approaching you angry anyway. They're just curious and wonder, what is that?
Yeah.
And they'll speak. And every time that I've had a conversation, but any time that's happened, somebody's noticed, did you just take that? Yeah, you'll show them the picture, or you'll have a chat about street photography. The majority are actually quite fine about it. They're maybe a bit bemused, but they don't really have an issue. Whereas because you're being open and you're actually comfortable with discussing what you're doing with them.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about connecting people, because it was once I was doing it, because I'm in a thing called the School of Photography, Damon, we get set assignments, and like it was one time a couple of years ago, it was the Six Nations it was on, and I was just standing at Haymarket in the traffic, I'm like the Haymarket bar, and I was just taking random shots of people walking towards me, and there was these four guys, and they were like, "Oh, did you just take a photo of us?" I said, "I hope you don't mind." And I showed them, like, "No, of course we don't mind. In fact, here's my email address. Can you send us that?" I went, "Of course I can." So it's just about connecting with people as well. But no, this has been wonderful. This has been wonderful, I think, and I think everything you've said has been really good for everybody that's listening to this and watching it, because it's what's good about it as well. It's been mixed through different genres of photography, and how you've talked about your learning and equipment and all the rest of it. So I'd just like to say it's been a pleasure, Damon, having you on, and we could have talked for hours, I guess, but we'll have to think about, just closing off. But thanks for giving us your time and sharing your images with us.
I loved your landscapes as well, Damon. They're brilliant. Where's your street?
Oh, thank you. Now, it's been a pleasure talking to you both about this, and it has been a pleasure to be on. I'm very thankful for the opportunity.
I'm glad you came on. We're really glad.
Pleasure, thank you.
Okay, not at all. And well, one thing we'd always just say, I mean, in the future, would you like to come back on and discuss any other topics with us in the future?
Yeah, I'd be more than welcome if you would like me. Yeah.
Or even interview other people as well.
Yeah, there's a couple of people I can think of. Give a few names and see if they'd be interested.
And you and Brian can interview them.
Oh. On the table.
Will you be all right with that, Damon? And I'll do the video and you can do the interviewing.
Oh dear.
It's been absolutely wonderful. Thanks once again, Damon.
Right, no worries. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Okay, thanks. Hope everyone else has enjoyed it.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.